That way, if either one of us is talking.
Now you're in alphabetical order in last name. Or, oh, nicely done.
Hey,
It's like you planned it.
so you made it out. Oh, shit.
Yeah.
You guys pick the chairs.
I know.
It'd be funny if you opened up all three while you were here. This is great because I don't have to be an expert. You guys are the experts, so I can just.
No, it's a job site.
Yeah, I'm an expert.
Social
I've
collaboration
seen
for a while.
stuff.
Stand by while I.
Yeah.
Yeah, Garbo called me out. So,
Garbo?
Yeah.
Oh, so you're pre-sale.
Yeah, I'm technical
Oh,
services, so I
right.
kind of work with Abhishek, kind of work with Garbo Studios.
Tech services that posted or?
Yeah, I went out to
we don't really make
Val. Well, we tried to go to Verst, which is like a German beer and sausage place. Yeah.
Well, we have SEs that do like.
Oh, got it.
pre-sales. It's a technical account managers, which is we buy in charge of.
Yeah.
Big account.
We had.
Yeah.
Oh shoot! Yeah, we went across the street. Oh man. Did you end up finding them or no?
Yeah, I built the Center of Excellence where we just kind of architect top of the line. So you do over 100K gets a Tammy, and then over half a million gets
Yeah.
So I end up having beers with some NBA.
I don't know. I haven't stopped
really?
doing that.
Well, I mean,
Made friends, obviously. Yeah.
dealing with Joe T's
It's good.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to be an
As it
engineer.
should
Wow,
be.
I want to be an Amazon. I'm like, I want to be there too. When you want when they take my call, I'll go,
Was it? Everyone can hear that. Yeah. It's all right. I think mine was on initially too.
Dallas, urgent call.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically.
This is fun. We should do this more
Yeah,
often.
but customer go live.
It is. Yeah, it is.
Doing some instrumentation, get the right data.
It's nice though, because I mean, Boris and I think and Gil had both proposed, metrics related talks, and then Steve was like, "I know Dave. Let's get Dave to come too." And he's like, "That's a great idea," but it is hard otherwise. You're right. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah. Actual, yeah, it's true.
It's actually
Yeah.
an open space session.
All right, doors are closed. Oh, there's still people trickling in here. We'll give them another. Give them another minute. One.
This one guy's like, smart guy was like, no, we test it first. And then
1 minute.
production. Okay. Nothing go wrong after that? No, we fully tested.
All right. How's everyone doing? Can you guys hear me all right? All right, loud and clear, excellent. Steve, you don't have to clap for me like that. I appreciate it though. Awesome. Well, we are continuing on day 2 sessions here. This is a first ever, honestly, running a panel like this. So we really hope you like it. Again, feedback welcome at the end, especially there'll be a survey that goes out near the end of the conference. Please provide us with feedback. We always want to know what goes well, what doesn't, what can we change for next time. So this one is pretty cool because I get to be up here with a few experts because I am far from it. So this is actually a treat for me to be able to introduce these guys. The cool thing actually is that this is a DevOps metrics panel, and I don't know if you know this, but they haven't been able to do these sorts of panels in the U.S. Because they have to call them DevOps Imperials panels. Oh, boo! Yeah. Come on, I got better ones coming. Just wait. Awesome. Well, my name's Dave Cliff. I work at PagerDuty. Metrics are very important to me, certainly, but let me introduce these guys. So, a couple of questions, I guess, just to get us started. I'd love to hear your name to start, your role, and why metrics are interesting to you, and let's throw something interesting in there. If you were trapped on a desert island, a deserted island, what metric would you want to see as the giant dashboard in the sky? Dave, let's start with you.
So my name's Dave Josephson. I work for Librato. My official title is Developer Evangelist. My background is operations. I've been doing a lot of monitoring for a long time. I wrote the Addison Wesley book on Nagios. Don't judge me.
Sorry.
Like a long time ago when Nagios was a thing, and it was cool. It's still a thing, but whatever. Metrics are kind of like, I don't know, and the metric system, for what it's worth, the metric system is also very important to me.
That's good.
But metrics have just sort of been the history of my, the history of my operational career to this point.
So if you were trapped on a deserted island.
I probably would go with wind speed direction. Can I get like a vector?
Oh, yeah.
So
Good
like
call.
I'd
Good
probably
call.
double up my metric and yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Very nice. Boris.
Thank you. So I'm Boris Lifshutz. I work at Akamai. So I'm the second speaker today from Akamai. Thanks. I work in the Advanced Solution Services Group. I'm an enterprise architect, so I advise big customers for Akamai about web performance, for their websites and architecture. So we use a lot of metrics there, both on the CDN and on the actual website, to monitor performance and analyze it. And before that, I used to work in the APM space, also on metrics. So I've seen back-end metrics, front-end metrics, all kinds of metrics.
Metrics everywhere.
Metrics are very important for everything we do. In terms of especially performance and operations availability. And I guess the question is on a deserted island.
On a deserted island.
So this is important, actually, one metric. And I wish I could ask all customers this, but I'd actually say the distance to the nearest boat or ship.
That was mine. He stole my answer. Nicely done.
Great minds think alike.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Gil.
Hi, I'm Gil Rice. I'm from New Relic. I'm a senior manager of tech services, so my team deals with implementing New Relic and making sure our customers are successful. Hopefully, a lot of you are our customers. Metrics, I think, and just in general, monitoring is such a abused field, and it's good to see so many new takes to it coming out with our ability to store much more and access much more and be much more, flexible with our metric usage. Desert Island, I guess, I don't know, the GPS coordinates of Marianne or Ginger.
Ah, okay. All right. I thought you were going to say like Celine Dion, honestly, but I always want to know where she is, just in case. Yeah, it doesn't get better. That's right. Yeah, it doesn't get better, honestly. All right, well, great. Thanks. Glad to have you guys here. This whole metric space is, it's huge. We could take it in a bunch of different directions, and we're gonna try to cover cover a broad range. Talk a little bit about design up front, some implementation techniques, collection. How you use metrics, and we'll talk a little bit about hopefully learning and analysis, and how you kind of get better at it over time. I guess just to start, though, Dave, maybe you want to take us through what really makes an effective operational metric. What is it that that kind of gets dev and ops actually speaking the same language there?
So, this is going to be a really easy answer because I think that the people in this room understand better than anyone that the most important thing about operational metrics is the human context behind them. So if you were sitting here in the last session, perfect example, fantastic talk about load testing and what inevitably happened after they failed to have an external vendor come in and very shallowly sort of examine the system was that they undertook to figure it out themselves. And the underlying realization there is that they don't understand how the thing that they care about actually works, even though they built it. And as DevOps, I think this is something that we all sort of understand very well. Like, it's easy to build a distributed system and then actually not understand how that architecture works. So the most important thing about any operational metrics is the mental model that we each form about the thing that we care about in the wild. We can't, just like we can't begin to create effective load balancing techniques, we can't begin to create effective metrics until we actually have an understanding of the things that we care about. And it sucks, it's human. I wish I could just tell you P95, Kafka, fucking latency, but it's just not how it works in real life, right? So, I mean, yeah, is that?
Yeah, that's great. Anyone else want to chime in on what makes kind of effective communication and collaboration between dev and ops on the metrics they should be looking at collectively?
I'll take a shot. And I think it's just to echo the comments there. I think it's all about outcome. It's a shared outcome between the business is driving, where the software that you're writing is going, what you're trying to achieve with that software, so that you've got a really tight sense of, what are going to be the KPIs that we can put against this to measure. So beyond saying things like a goal or saying things like a strategy, I think when you're able to sit down and say, I expect to see, some level of performance improvement between point A and point B, or I want to see more opt-ins for a particular route on my app, or I want to see more credit card payments processed more frequently with better timing. Those are kind of the high-level outcomes that if you have a driver towards, you can then fill in the gaps behind that.
So from a kind of a personas perspective, I mean, we talked a little bit about dev and ops, and I mean, it feels like a little bit, at least in the customers that I talk to, that there actually needs to kind of be a larger conversation, and even what you guys were saying there kind of alluded to it a little bit. So, I mean, what other personas within the org are you kind of need to start thinking about metrics, and how do you bring those all together to think about them more collectively, Boris?
Yeah, so I think it's important actually to bring in the whole organization. We talk about DevOps, right, and that's important, developers ops, but the business side is also very important. Mm-hmm. If you engage them, it helps with the resourcing, with budget, to really see the bottom line of why you're building something, why you're investing in the performance tuning. We saw for load testing, right? So in the space, I see a lot of companies are building business metrics, right? So not just how fast is the CPU or how fast is the response time, but also revenue per minute or something like that can be a metric, or number of orders per minute in a business, right? And that really brings in the business people, and you can also alert on a business metric, right? Like, is revenue below $1,000 per 5 minutes? I've seen a travel site do that. So a travel site, right? Everything's okay and all the machines are up, but there's no revenue, right? So the business guys want to be alerted on that also, right? And they want to see what's happening inside their business. And they can do that through these metrics, right? So involve the business side, developer ops, all parts of the business, really. So who should not want to see metrics, right? The marketing people want to see how happy are customers. How do you see how happy the customers are? Well, how fast is the response time? Things like that, right? So you should really, you bring in everyone, and everyone should focus on the same metrics, like these guys were saying.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, how is the $1,000 question? The really interesting thing about effective KPIs is that dev and ops separately are kind of incapable of providing you them, right? Because if you take an ops team and you set it out there and you're like, you guys are in charge of building this metric system, they'll build you a metric system, but they can't give you, operational metrics. And the dev side can give those to you, but often when they have no control or influence over the metric system itself, the interfaces that have been put in place don't work very well with them. So independent, those teams both kind of have their hands tied by definition in the same way that they so often do, right? Those two silos, a lot gets lost in the chucking the
What's an example, I guess, of kind of a conversation you've seen between dev and ops where it was just like, wow, it's just amazing how much they're talking past each other, like they're not even talking the same language. Can you give
what does that metric mean? I think
right.
So much of it is what's our page view rate today versus yesterday? Okay, what's a page view to you versus somebody else? And what's an important one? I mean, I think that there's a lack of coordination on what the meanings of a lot of the data that we get is. And as a result of that, you get yourselves into bizarre conclusions as a result of kind of misinterpreting it.
How do you step up and start to promote that collaboration? Because you got to get people in the same room at some point, but
Failure?
failure?
So,
Okay.
I think one of the reasons that we celebrate failure so often in our community is the fact that DevOps is really an emergent quality of failure. It's what happens when things aren't working and, skilled people sort of take a step back and a higher level view and start, unraveling the actual problems. So I think for a lot of organizations, and I think this is kind of why we're stuck in this metrics mess and the monitoring mess, is that a lot of people are just in their failure stage. And I think that a lot of organizations have moved past that and have created pretty amazing systems like we have, the Netflixes and the Twitters of the world. Those are very high scale, very sort of like bespoke, systems. But I think that a lot of the success is eventually going to filter down. Like people are going to realize it's not one tool, it's not one vendor, it's not one, it's actually an operational, necessity in the same way that, yeah.
Organizationally, culturally, you need to get your head wrapped around this. So for someone who's sitting here, maybe who is a developer or is on the ops side, and they know their metrics, they know what's important, what's important to them. How would you encourage them to, like, what kind of questions can they start asking of business people in their org in order to actually get a better picture for what things they should actually care about?
What are we like collectively measured on as a company? I think like boiling it down to that high level business requirement, the business driver of we need to do more transactions per day. They have to be of a particular size. We have to reduce failure on very specific atomic events on the website, and getting that essentially consensus before you go.
Yeah.
So one thing I've seen, a lot of customers or a lot of developer ops, whatever, produce metrics like the average response time of a web page is 3 seconds. Is great. We're happy, right? 3 seconds is our goal. But average or median even implies that the half your customers are happy, right? So what for you guys may be a good thing, for the business side may not be a good thing, right? So so understanding what the SLA really means. An SLA of 99% or 90% is different than a median or an average, right? So it's important to align those metrics with SLA and things like that from the business, right?
Yeah, that's great.
I'll just add to that.
Ahead.
Sorry that. Yeah, I guess we've been thought leadering. Sorry, but I should step back and say, I think that a lot of organizations who have had the failures and are working in like pretty good systems definitely have a few things in common in terms of like the actual like practical metrics that they're choosing. They're picking percentiles over things like averages. They're storing data. They're storing more data, but more specific data. So instead of like widely throwing a net or casting a net over, every possible, like measuring all the things, right? They're measuring very specific things, but they're also measuring more of it. Like they're not only keeping an average, they're also keeping 4 or 5 percentiles from like 75th to 99th.
Right.
They're also storing a count, a min and a max, so that maybe later they can combine like the count with. They can compute the average later, right? In a way that's not going to be lossy or as lossy as storing an average directly.
Yeah.
There was more there, but I've forgotten it.
That's great. No, we definitely want some good practical things that everyone here can effectively take away with and go then apply. I think jumping into kind of implementation and actually, how do you approach collection of metrics now? It seems like that's gotten easier and easier and easier, but there are still a variety of different approaches. So, Boris, maybe you can take us through what are some of those approaches that customers out here could be evaluating effectively, and what's something that they maybe miss in doing that?
Yeah, well, by collection, I assume you mean the aggregation of all
Yeah,
these metrics,
yeah.
right? So you heard a talk yesterday to combining your metrics and even your log data, everything like that. And that's very important to get everything, into one place, or at least have one way of looking at everything. But, there's two ways I would say that, you should think about this in terms of, of troubleshooting, right? So when you're troubleshooting, you want to see all your metrics for all your systems to be able to pinpoint where things are happening, right? And so there's two things you'll need. One is a time correlation, right? So that minute or that 10-minute space where you had an outage or you're having a problem, what are all the metrics, that are below the baseline or that are causing a problem, right? That are wrong, basically. All the logs, all the metrics, so you can actually see what's depending on what's hitting what, right? Because, if one service is calling another service and both are slow, well, it's probably the root cause is down there at the lowest service. You need to see the relationship there. And the other correlation is just that, basically, the correlation on the request. So if you have a call chain, you hit some website, it's going to go back to your servers or, go back to the browser. If you can tie all those metrics on a request or some kind of other ID, right, then you can see, right, the call flow, and basically it's like a stack trace then you have to investigate. Because a lot of times otherwise you have a lot of metrics, you have a lot of logs, and they're all together, but they're all red. So, so you have 100 red lights, and you're trying to figure out what's wrong. Well, 100 red lights or one red light doesn't really change things for you unless you can correlate all those together into some way.
Yeah.
Something actually Dave said with your first comment is something that we deal with a lot in my role, and that's getting appropriate context with that analytic, like that hardcore response time, frequency type data. So not only being able to track that transaction, but understand who that was, what they were doing, what was the context of that thing that they were doing at that point in time in the day is so incredibly important to really get a sense of, is this totally a variant use case and we're seeing something exceptional happen here? Or is this something that's well within the expected behavior of this app, this process that we have?
Yeah, and I'll just say, the metric systems that I love to use just as an operations guy or as a programmer don't standardize on collection, right? They allow me to use whatever tools are the best for my particular purpose. And then so there's kind of like there's an enforced non-standardization of actual metrics collection. Literally anything goes as long as it's not going to break systems. So collect diamond, any of the language bindings, a lot of shops like to throw everything into logs and then sync the logs, right?
Yeah.
And then where the standardization happens is the input interface to the persistence layer, basically. So that's, for a lot of shops, open source, that's StatsD, or, Influx, or, one of those systems. Increasingly, I think it's going to be like Heck or Riemann. And then
Time series and...
Yeah, and then whatever happens back there happens, but it all happens the same. And everybody knows how to get there and emit to it, and it's definitely, it becomes like the standard interface organization-wide for anybody, whether they're an accountant or a dev or an op. You chuck a metric at it, and it all comes out in the same place. So I think there's definitely, it's important to have this line in the sand between collectors are open season, but what they collect, right? The output of those agents all sort of comes into the same spot.
Yeah. And then from there, I mean, you need some effective way of then visualizing, because you've got all this data now. You need some actual good way of using it. So what are some of the options out there effectively for visualization and and even things like physical dashboards. I think there's some people who are very, very adamant about you got to have a physical dashboard versus kind of something that's entirely virtual. I would love your perspectives on on where the
Liberato.
Was that a leading question? Is that what you're telling me, Dave?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right.
I mean, I don't know, unless you guys want to take it. Like the most popular open source one out there right now is certainly Grafana.
Yep.
It's beautiful and well done. I think those guys are spinning off now into a company of their own, I think I read. So there will be support, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, like you said, there's that. There's other tools, you can use off the shelf or through your monitoring vendor dashboard. The key is that you have one common dashboard, right? A lot of people I see at customer sites, developers have their dashboard, or each team has their different dashboards, right? Everyone's got their key metrics, which is a good start. But having one master dashboard that's up there, forcing people to actually look at that, which is another thing, right? Are people looking at the dashboard? Are you doing something about it? Is there red lights actually at the company, right? And having the right metrics on the dashboard, right? Which is another problem. I see a lot of people doing these really complex dashboards, like 10 pages long, right? And so, you want to get only the key, like if you're stuck on a desert island type dashboards, and that should be a critical, people are walking through the hallways, that's the metrics, you're looking at, right? So I think the key is, it's not that hard, I think, to get the dashboard. I mean, to pick the vendor or whatever, I think it's more important what you stick in the dashboard and how as a company, you view it.
No, I just agree that you need a consistency of experience for all of those stakeholders, and that you don't want to pick a solution that is more friendly to the engineer than it is to the business analyst. Like, you want to be able to share in some really substantive way. So whatever you're using, it has to be open and it has to be accessible.
Yeah, that's great.
One of the things that I've been realizing like lately, just as my own knowledge has kind of grown, is that a lot of the right answers for building distributed systems in general work together very well, and dashboards is one of those one example.
Yeah.
So like at Librato, our engineers, like we run a microservices architecture. It's very well architected. It's somewhere around a dozen or so individual services. Yep. There's an Apache Storm topology, several queues, eventually like a Cassandra persistence layer with a service in front of it to sort of abstract the data storage piece. And we run a dashboard per service, right? Mm-hmm. So like literally on the wall, you have one of the browser plugins. It just goes, every 15 seconds from service to service. And it's a pretty great means of sort of breaking up the preponderance of individual graphs and collecting them in a way that makes logical sense.
Yeah, that's what we've done internally as well, and that seems to work out really well, especially in a firefight, which ultimately is kind of the next area that I wanted to talk about, of alerting specifically. I mean, how do you, when you're building alerts, what kinds of context have you seen customers be successful pushing in there, or what are the things that people are just that really makes such a big difference in terms of their alert design? Boris, I want to talk to that one.
So when I work with customers, one thing I've always kind of advocated is what's called proactive monitoring, right? So unfortunately, most people won't look at dashboards. They're busy, they won't pull it up on their UI, whatever, right? So to really have proactive monitoring, to force people, to react quickly, you need alerting, right? So that's the start of it, like PagerDuty, right? And with that, to do that effectively, I think it's important. It's not the alert itself, because you can also, delete emails, or you're not sure if you're flooded with 100 emails of alerts, right? The key thing is to have as little as possible in the alert, and have a link back to the dashboard, or whatever dashboard is appropriate, or whatever screen in your monitoring system is appropriate to do the troubleshooting. I mean, that's the fastest way. Otherwise, you got all these metrics and logs on an email or whatever you get alerted on, right? It's very hard to troubleshoot, especially if you're on a train or something like that. But the key is to bring you back into the system of metrics, right? Into your collection, so you can get a good look at that. And if you just have a link or something that you click on through the alert, then you're back in the context-sensitive place you should be. And I always found that to be, the fastest way to do troubleshooting.
Yeah, go where the context is. Yeah, that's great. Let's talk a little bit about kind of the learning process around metrics and kind of iteration, because I think it's something where I see a lot of customers kind of define a bunch of stuff up front, and then they kind of don't touch it forever. So what are some of the best practices that you guys have seen with respect to kind of being militant about going back and kind of culling some metrics that maybe aren't important that you discover over time? How frequently do how frequently do you internally look at that sort of thing?
We're pretty constantly looking at it. I
Yeah.
would say probably weekly or biweekly basis. But then we have a very strong, I call it, my CTO Joe calls it a show me the data culture. So like our KPIs are kind of, well, they're kind of precious to us, like in a way, like we share them with each other and sort of hold them against each other on a daily basis in a healthy way. Like entire conversations will happen in our chat rooms that consist of not words, but just graphs back and forth, right? Like our engineers will literally have arguments with pictures. So we, and I think it's not anything that I think I've seen to the degree outside of Librado that I see it in Librado, but I would like to see it more often. I would definitely like to see more shops in the wild who were just sort of, their operational metrics were working well enough for them that they, they sort of guarded them. They shared with each other this, these insights, basically. Like that's kind of what a metric should be. It should be a manifestation of insight. And if you think about the last talk is a perfect example. Great talk. God, great talk. Where's that guy? Great talk. If you think about, like where they were in the narrative before, they actually started digging into their own stuff, and then 5 minutes later where they were afterwards. Things like what your key operational metrics should be, what you should be alerting on, all of that stuff is just, it's completely obvious to you because you draw it straight out of your own mental model for the thing that you actually care about.
I see this kind of this distinction between the organizations that have that structured outcome that you're trying to get to, and then when they don't, there's a couple of anti-patterns that start to manifest. One of those is I just want to collect all the things. I just want to like create some HBase somewhere, some cloud provider, and just pump as much data into this as possible. And they get obsessed with hoarding the data. Like I'm sure there's going to be some reality TV show about like getting rid of data hoarding in the very near future. And then the other side of it is the people that just become like bent on, retrograde analysis, and they can't get out of their own way in terms of like trying to find and divine some sort of secret to the data that they're looking at. And they're not thinking about the bigger picture, and they're not aligning that to, I'm trying to achieve and I'm trying to move my business from point A to point B. I'm just getting stuck in this rut that, at 3 a.m. every Saturday, something bad happens, and I'm trying to correlate what that is. Like, maybe that bad thing happened, and certainly it's great that you want to get to the bottom of it, but maybe just think about achieving your business results and excelling there, and stop wasting your energy and selling in a place that you're not actually going to be able to improve the business's outcome.
So I just want to talk about the culling. I mean, I think it is, there's a balance, I think, between what you guys have said. So you don't always know what metrics you'll need until you're in a firefight, right? So you have to be careful about the culling. I mean, too many metrics is also a problem. I think last I saw at Netflix, they collect 60 million metrics a minute, which is a lot. And, they have no budget problems, so I guess they can get away with that. But it's very hard on top of that to find the metric you want, to analyze it, to stick it on a dashboard. I mean, there's definitely some. It's not really economies of scale there, right? But on the other hand, a lot of people actually, they instrument their code. Developers actually stick code in their code to collect certain metrics, right? Versus vendor, like New Relic vendor instrumented metrics, right? And so the problem with that is, of course, you don't know live in production what you're going to need. So it's kind of a compromise of how many metrics you collect. So be careful with too much or too little metrics.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we're.
Can I very politely disagree with that?
No.
I love you, man.
No.
So like, just as an operator, I've never once, and maybe other people have, but I've never once like been collecting all the things, because I have been in shops where like we were strenuously like data collecting all the time. I've never had a fire, like, you know, web server goes away or, you know, like something happens. I've never like gone to a metrics interface to dig around for a metric that might tell me what's going on. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like if you don't know what you're going to need to troubleshoot the problem later, then you don't need to be collecting it. You're not going to use it, like, practically. You may use it post-mortem, but you're not going to use it in the middle of a fire, probably. I feel very much like if you know how your system works, then you are definitely going to know ahead of time what those KPIs are, and you're going to, once you find them, they are going to test your operational hypotheses, the things that we've been saying, like that you said, where I expect there to be a 4 millisecond latency between service A and service B. I expect that because I know my system. And that metric is a KPI because I know my system. And if that's not operating the way I want, then it is proof of my hypothesis being incorrect, which is information. And that's better information I would get from SSH.
This seems like a great conversation that we're going to have to pick up in open spaces, which is great. This is exactly why we have these guys here. Honestly, I think we can have a great open space conversation about this later. But just want to wrap up and say thank you so much for being here. Please, can everyone give them a round of applause? Thank you. Great to have your insights here. All right, we are going to wrap for lunch. Hopefully everyone's excited about that. All right, we'll see you back in an hour.
Sad to say I've seen it.